Welcome back. We're here on our seventh episode. There's a few things we wanted to talk about before we get started. If you want to send us a message, ask us to talk about something, you can send that to our email address listed below, as well as our Twitter. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and comment in the comments section and subscribe.
All right, Dan, let's get started. How was your weekend?
Well, it was really good. I actually just discovered there's a Korean market behind my house. And yeah. So
Good food?
Well, good food. It's a meat market. So I went and got bulgogi marinade sauce. So I'm going to try that on my chicken today to see if it tastes any good. The stuff in the store, I don't know. It's just okay. So we'll see if this is a little more authentic. I live in kind of a Korean neighborhood in Los Angeles, and so I'm hoping it's good stuff. How about you? How was your weekend?
Oh, it was great. I took the kids out to Comic-Con here in Edmonton. It's actually called the Comic Expo. I guess there's copyright issues with calling it Comic-Con. It was great fun. Unfortunately, a lot of the big stars didn't show up. They canceled last minute, but we still had fun. I was dressed up as Captain Christopher Pike from Star Trek, and the kids all wore their geekiest shirts, and we just had fun watching people and trying to spot celebrities and, of course, eating bad food and just getting our geek on. It was awesome.
So did your costume include a leotard?
No, I didn't wear the leotard. That's the next thing I have to buy. But I had the authentic original series shirt that it's the exact same color, the same fabric, everything that was in the original series. So,
oh, cool. Are you talking Captain Kirk? I missed which captain you said.
Well, Christopher Pike is before Captain Kirk. He was in the pilot in the original series.
Oh, I did. I saw it. I saw the first one. It's on Netflix, I think. And I thought that's strange. That isn't the regular Captain Kirk I'm used to.
Well, the reason why I chose Christopher Pike is also in Star Trek Discovery Season 2. He's going to be the captain that shows up and starts interacting with the Discovery, kind of that bridging captain into the original series, since Discovery takes place just before it. So fascinating stuff, and of course a few people did recognize me, and they said, "Which captain are you?" So yeah, we got our geek on. It was great.
That is geeky, and it's a good way to try and explain the role switch, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember when they switched Aunt Viv in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, thinking
oh, yeah.
Who
is it? Did he get married to a new person? This is just weird.
Why are they calling it the same name? So to start out, we've got some kind of cool news. I guess there's a new gut-brain connection that could lead to a new sense. So there's a new study that says that fast-acting neural circuit allows gut cells to communicate with the brain in seconds. So if you've ever had that gut feeling when you've gone somewhere that something's off, that might actually be real. Apparently they figured out that the stomach and the brain communicate a lot faster than we think. And this could actually be used for a lot of really cool tech uses in the future. This was done out of Duke University, and it really is remarkable work that they're doing. Did you hear anything about that?
No, nothing at all. I'm just curious. I mean, I think it's great. It's our sixth sense. I got a bad gut feeling about this. But what do you think it could be used for?
I'm hoping medical reasons. I'm hoping they're going to be able to check out the flora in your gut. Maybe they could do tests where they use certain dyes. They said that they actually used a mouse and put a certain dye in its stomach and found traces of it in the brain literally milliseconds later. Perhaps we could discover different ways to diagnose and treat gut problems. I think that's just scratching the surface. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty neat.
Another kind of neat, interesting thing going on is genetically modifying mosquitoes. So Matt, growing up in Canada, we had a lot of mosquitoes, and a lot of people joke that in Alberta it's the provincial bird.
Yes.
And I remember one time I broke down on the side of the road on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park with Mom, and we had to walk to the nearest gas station. And I remember there being thick black clouds of mosquitoes and just running through them, and you could feel them peltering your face as you ran through them. Do you still have bad mosquitoes like that? in
You know
Edmonton?
what? Every year is different. Some years there's like flocks and hordes of mosquitoes that will just descend upon you and your children and just suck you dry. And then other years you hardly see any. It really depends on how wet the summer is. This summer wasn't too bad, but I got to tell you, as an RV guy, and I love to take my motorhome out, my biggest pet peeve is mosquitoes. And I just love coming and visiting you down there in LA because you don't have the same mosquito problem we do. And, just that feeling of walking around in the dark at night, I'm always cringing because in Canada, that's mosquito season. Like, you just head for home. Don't hang out at night when the sun's going down because they're lurking in the darkness, right?
Yes. Well, this is really cool. They actually genetically modified the species using a CRISPR technique.
Yeah.
And what they did was they were able to make hordes of these mosquitoes become infertile, and so they weren't able to reproduce, and it really brought down the amount of mosquitoes in the next batch for the next year. So it's exciting, but there's some negative consequences potentially. I mean, what eats mosquitoes, right? I mean, are we going to destroy a food chain there? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, that was my thought when you sent me the link and I started reading about this. So, first of all, I think it's great. I don't know if mosquitoes have any benefit to ecology other than feeding birds and bats and other predators. And I hope that if we do decide to eradicate mosquitoes, that would prevent malaria and other diseases that get sent around in mosquitoes. What was that one that was causing birth defects a while ago?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It was all in Brazil, and yeah, those types of things could be eradicated, and hopefully there'll be less blood-sucking bugs that will sort of fill the niche of mosquitoes. But it does make me wonder a little bit what would be the effects of eradicating this pest.
So how many people do you think die a year from malaria?
I wouldn't even begin to guess. Did you see any numbers?
Yeah, almost 500,000 is what the estimate is. So 400,000 a year, and most of them are children under 5 years old. So I think it might be worth getting rid of a bat or two to save all those people that are potentially passing away from the pass on of malaria.
The one thing I saw that was fascinating about it is the way that CRISPR was eradicating these mosquitoes is it was sterilizing them. It was basically creating the next generation after they reproduced sterile. And so in essentially one generation, which is literally days or weeks.
Yeah.
Days or weeks with mosquitoes,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
You've wiped out that population. So it's fast. It's a little bit scary to think that we have that kind of control. But we've been doing CRISPRs for a while now, and we've been doing gene editing on plants for a long time. For example, most of the plants that we grow and eat are genetically modified in some way or another, either to be robust and prevent insects from eating them. They can handle hardier weather. They can grow a lot more wheat in a bushel. These are great things that genetically modifying is doing. But also these companies are protecting themselves by making that generation of whatever is being produced sterile. So you can't collect the seeds and do your own seeding the next year if you want this fabulous new genetically modified product.
And what you're talking about is quite controversial. I know people in Alberta love the canola plant, which I think is genetically modified, a GMO. But when I was living in Hawaii, people hated GMOs, and we would constantly have people protesting in the streets. Because Monsanto or whatever it's called, that big company that
Monsanto,
they were doing a bunch of testing out there in Hawaii. So I think you'll find people that are very pro, and I think the pro points you went over, it's more robust, bugs don't eat it as much, you get a higher crop yield. But then there are some people that are a little bit leery about eating a plant that's not natural. Could it cause potential side effects? Could companies go ahead and copyright the plant and say you're not allowed to grow this, only we are, and would that create a monopoly? There's a lot of pros and cons to those sides. And, maybe with bugs and eliminating mosquitoes, we'd have certain corporations and companies profiting off of it and other farmers losing out. I don't know. There could be pros and cons to it too.
Let's wait and see. So, Dan, here's another interesting article that you found, and I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit about this. It's just that side gig economy looks like it's not nearly as lucrative as it was a year or two ago.
That's right. You're talking about Uber. They did a study where they took the average amount that people earned in 2013, 5 years ago, and compared it to today. And it's remarkably lower. It's 53% less is what the average Uber driver is earning this year as opposed to 2013. And there could be several reasons for that. It might be that Uber drivers are working less hours. Demand hasn't really increased to meet the number of drivers. The prices have fallen. There's more competition with Lyft and other things. People are doing the scooters now. Are they doing scooters in Edmonton?
I haven't seen any scooters, no.
They're pretty cool. When you come out here to LA next time, we'll go to Santa Monica. Yeah, it's full of people on scooters, millennials out everywhere, outside of their cars, in the community. It's fun to watch. But that's controversial too. A lot of people are trying to get rid of them because they're littering the sidewalks. Well, everywhere you go, there's these scooters that are electronic, and people don't put them away nicely. They just throw them on people's lawns. They throw them on business sidewalks, and they're just littered everywhere. I mean,
so
they look cool.
They're the new Segway, remember when everybody was whipping around on Segways? Now it's scooters and...
Well, what you're saying is true. I mean, it's a fad, obviously. People love it. And it's funny, I just went to church this morning and walked outside, and there was, maybe 20 of these scattered right on, like, near the lawn, right, in Santa Monica. And it's just funny to see that. But I mean, the positive things are people are out in the community more. I mean, when you're behind a car in Los Angeles, you don't talk to each other. At least you can make eye contact with people, and it's fun. I see people out on dates, 2 people on a scooter. They're going up and down the path, on the boardwalk. It's a lot of fun. So I'll have to show you that next time you're here.
That'd be great. Maybe you can tweet out a picture of those. So to get back to the side gig and how it's being affected, is the fact that it's harder to make money in a side gig because prices are getting more competitive, is that better for the consumer? Like myself, if I wanted to go get an Uber, am I seeing that the price of an Uber is dropping? Or is it really just the amount of money that's going into the Uber driver's pocket because they're getting less fares?
Perhaps, but you'll find with surge pricing, there's times of the day where it really is more expensive. So I don't really know how much you're saving as a consumer. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating. I mean, the taxi drivers that were here 20 years ago and have been working ever since, some of them have switched over to Uber, and I just feel like their paychecks keep getting cut. And I think maybe even in the next 5 years, we might see robots take over and have self-driving Ubers. And so, it really is frustrating that, the robots are coming for our jobs.
And robots are coming.
It might be good for the consumer in a way, but I think you'll find that if you looked at the data, you're probably spending just as much as a consumer. I don't really know how much you're saving since 2013. So I think the big businesses are probably winning here. That's my opinion.
So I think it's interesting just from reading this article and your notes on it. It looks like it's really because this decline in them making money is because there's more and more people who are driving for Uber or Lyft or some of these other side gigs. Meanwhile, you've got a very fascinating note in here that says leasing apps like Airbnb, Turbo, Parkly, Outdoorsy, where you can rent your RV, those seem to be on the move and on the increase. In fact, the statistic you have here says 69% revenue has increased by people posting things that could be rented like that.
I'm a big numbers guy, So if you look at the numbers, back in 2013, monthly on average, people doing Airbnb and other things leasing out their properties, they would get $783 a month, and now it's $1,469. So it's almost doubled. And Airbnb is huge here because
Hmm.
people love to come down here and experience the sunshine. And, people are taking more advantage of that with their properties. So that's positive. But I think when it comes to Uber and other ride sharing apps, things are just going down.
It seems to me that it's the service industry that first had this spike in popularity, like Uber and Lyft, and we also have Skip the Dishes as another side hustle you can have. So
Is that like Uber Eats or?
yeah, it's like Uber Eats. It may be a Canadian thing, but basically, restaurants that normally don't deliver, you can go through Skip the Dishes, and they'll have a minor fee to deliver you food. I used it all the time when I was working out at an industrial site during night shift, and I wanted to feed a bunch of angry construction workers, and so it's like, oh, Donairs for everybody.
Just so that everybody knows, a donair is actually a gyro or a gyro with
Yeah.
amazing sauce. It's got this white sauce that's made out of sweetened condensed milk. It's not available in the United States.
What?
The second you go to Canada, get off the plane and get a donair. Ask
Get
for
a
the
donair.
sweet white sauce.
You'll be in heaven. So, anyways, I use Skip the Dishes. It would be exactly like Uber Eats. So that's the service industry, and it looks like it spiked, and now a lot of people are into the service industry, and it's harder to make money. Meanwhile, on the rental industry, Airbnb, Parkly, Turo, and the one I want to talk about is Outdoorsy. That seems to be on the rise as more and more consumers are comfortable with using these apps. I think that actually Lyft and Uber paved the way. Once people got in their first Uber and realized this isn't a scary person who just signed up and is trying to make some money and might murder me, right?
Which does happen, like we talked about last week.
It does happen, but it looks like people are becoming more comfortable and starting to trust these services. For example, Outdoorsy is an app that I'm looking at using next summer. I have a motorhome that sits and doesn't get used all the time, and I'd like to make some money off it. And on Outdoorsy, people can rent my Class A, which is a big bus, and it's a diesel pusher. Now, I've got a friend who has a gas Class A, that's a bus, not nearly as nice as mine, and he listed it just before the May long weekend this spring, and he said within a week he had over $10,000 worth of people booking his RV. And I thought, 10,000? Just think of the amount of money you could make. How many people have trailers or motorhomes just sitting in storage or in their backyards that could be out making them money? So perhaps we'll see this spike, as we talked about with the service industry, and maybe we'll see it drop off as more and more people get into things like Airbnb and Turo and Outdoorsy. But still, it's an opportunity to make some money on the side.
That's really exciting. Also, for our American listeners, the May long weekend is Memorial Day. A lot of people don't know what that is. I've tried that a few times.
It is, yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about is that Apple actually just bought Shazam. Do you ever use Shazam?
I Shazam all the time.
So I remember when Shazam first came out, and I tried to show some friends how cool it was. It's the app where you stick it next to a speaker, and within a few seconds, it knows what the song is. And I had a lot of friends push back at first and say, why would I do that? I can just hear the words in the song and then type it in a Google search. Well, there's sometimes where you can't understand what it is, or maybe you're listening to a song that's just a beat. So it's been quite popular. And I think it's actually driven the sales for a lot of streaming downloads. And it's been quite profitable. And I think that's one of the reasons why Apple wants to own it. Now, they claim that they're going to take away the advertisements for it. And they actually spent $400 million on it. Now, here are some of these numbers. I'm kind of a numbers person. So did you know that Shazam has been downloaded over 1 billion times? I mean, how many people even live on the earth? 7-8 billion? Like, that's 1/7. That's insane, right?
Yeah.
That 1/7 of the people of the earth have it. And they say that it's used over 20 million times a day. And so if you take the population of like Southern California, that's everyone here using it once a day. That's insane.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane to think how many people use it. I love using Shazam. I even had the little the app on my phone where I could just push it and oh, here's the song, and then I could click on it. I could download it from iTunes. I could watch it on YouTube. I mean, all these things were a fantastic way to get this music onto my phone. So I think that's why Apple says we don't need advertising. Shazam needed the advertising, and it considered itself a little bit of a radio player, I'm guessing, and that's why advertising naturally fit in with the Shazam model. However, Apple's going to benefit hugely. I'm sure it's already benefited hugely by having people Shazamming and then instantly going to iTunes.
Here's the question, though. Yeah. Like, what does this mean that people that aren't Apple will have a harder time recognizing songs? Does this mean Samsung phones or, other kinds of Android tablets maybe wouldn't have the opportunity? I'm sure they'll still be able to download Shazam, but...
So to get to your question, I'm a little bit concerned about that as well. I don't think it will be harder to Shazam a song and know what the song is, or even have access to its lyrics and all the fun things that Shazam is known for. But what I'm concerned about is it may not be as simple to go to YouTube and say, I want to watch the video of this in YouTube. So that's what my concern is. I think that they may try to push Google and YouTube out by making it more of an Apple-centric service.
Interesting. One other cool article that I wanted to talk about before we get into the geeky stuff is, did you hear that they actually have an implant that has helped 2 people with paralysis walk again? So this is pretty cool. This is based out of, I believe it's Tennessee. So NBC News said that at least 5 people whose legs were completely paralyzed are walking again, 2 of them with no outside help, thanks to a specialized program of therapy and a pain stimulator implanted in their spines. So this is kind of the big dream, right, to help people that are paralyzed walk again. Now, we've seen a lot of things like exoskeletons. We've seen muscle stimulation, but I think this is really exciting. This is a cool advancement. It's the latest and most dramatic advancement in the approach to treating spinal cord injuries. And yeah, it's the University of Louisville in Kentucky, actually, that is working on that.
I look forward to seeing a little bit more about that. I've seen exoskeletons used for people with spinal injuries. I think that the sky's the limit with what they can do. I mean, cyberpunk is coming. Usually what we see in science fiction from 20, 30 years ago are a reality today. I mean, Captain Kirk had an iPad. So we're going to see similar things happen. I think this is even greater than the exoskeleton because you're actually doing some repair to those nerves. I look forward to seeing what happens.
I also wanted to talk really quickly about SiriusXM acquiring Pandora. $3.5 billion deal recently that happened, and this is creating the world's largest audio entertainment company. Now, when I read this, I was fascinated because, number one, as a millennial, I don't use Pandora. And number 2, as a millennial, I don't use SiriusXM. I'm on Spotify, I'm on Apple Music, I'm on YouTube. Those things, they seem kind of like people used them 10, 15 years ago. Do you know a lot of people that use SiriusXM in their car still, or?
No, actually I don't. And if I do, it's usually a free service that comes with the car. And they have it for a year. The only people I know that used to subscribe to SiriusXM were people who worked out in the bush, out in the boonies, didn't have access to regular radio. So if you're way up in the Northwest Territories, underneath the Arctic Circle there, perfect. You can get radio, and you can listen to Howard Stern, and away you go. But I think
amazing.
You're right.
You can really get SiriusXM up in the Northwest Territories?
Oh, yeah. Because it's satellite based. So I think that there will always be a market for satellite based radio. And perhaps it will grow in areas like the second world instead of the first world. Places where people are becoming more affluent, but maybe they don't have access to radio and internet like we have here. However, I absolutely agree with your insight as to millennials, and even myself. I'm a Generation Xer, and I don't listen to regular radio. I don't watch regular TV. I use streaming services like Netflix, and I would use Hulu if we could get it here in Canada.
Oh, you still don't have Hulu?
No.
Wait a minute, though. But do you use Pandora? Because I sure don't.
No, we actually can't even get Pandora here, but I use Spotify, and I'm seriously thinking about going to YouTube Music. Because I am an Android person and a Google user, and that's just one more service that falls underneath the umbrella of Google. And so to me, that just seems like a no-brainer to just migrate that way. But I think you're right. This could be a bad buy, but I think SiriusXM realized they're on the way out. They're seeing a drop in subscribers. They see the internet as the savings to their to making money, and this is something that they could afford. $7 billion is a lot of money.
I wish I could afford that.
Wait a minute, $3.5 billion is what they paid.
3.5. Chump change.
Yeah, chump change, right? But that being said, I think that it's they're betting on the wrong horse. Now, what's interesting to get into that streaming media business, there's another article here that you posted that says streaming accounts for 75% of music industry revenue. Now, that's in the U.S. alone, but that's huge, Dan. Mm-hmm. I think that really shows they're betting on the wrong horse by going with radio-based listening to music. So Pandora, although when it first came out, was neat because it would say, oh, you like this song? And here's a radio station I've created. Well, Spotify does that, and Spotify makes recommendations and says, hey, I think you're going to like Swedish country music. And I was like, Swedish country music? I don't think so. And then I listened to it, and I was like, this is great. This is not ABBA meets Willie Nelson. Like, it's alternative, it's cool, and guess who knew I would like it? Spotify.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You know, one of the most fascinating things in this article about the streaming music is that, did you know that vinyl is 13% of the sales now? And that's almost as much as CDs or more. That's insane, right? I have a few friends that listen only to vinyl, and, you know, it's kind of a thing where you go into their house and they have the vinyl on.
Yeah.
Do people do that up there too?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's an audiophile thing, and it's retro, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of hipster, and maybe the sound is a little bit better, but really CDs are retro too. So
yeah, they are.
To be able to say, you know, CDs are 12%, they used to be 100 or 95%, and to say vinyl is 13, it used to be 100, right? Until cassette tapes came out. So I still see, vinyl's increasing because of its audiophile appeal and its retro appeal. But it's not going to grow much more than that. It's not going to take over the music industry. We are going digital, and I think what we're going to see in the future is streaming apps that are going to get their packets of music in better quality, smaller chunks, so we're not using all of our data. And when 5G networks come out, it's just going to be that much easier to stream.
That's true. You know, I have a funny story. Yesterday, a patient was telling me she wanted to get me this DVD for me to watch.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess there's this DVD store somewhere in Los Angeles that she knows about. She was going to get it for me, and I told her, I don't have a DVD player. I mean, you have your PlayStation 4. I don't have a PlayStation.
Yeah.
Literally, my laptop doesn't have a DVD player. My Roku doesn't. I mean, I couldn't play it if I tried. So it's interesting how we're all shifting away from physical media, and now, you know, that streaming music is 75%. That's fascinating. Now, you had some articles about Android. I can't believe it's been 10 years that it's been out.
Yeah, actually. So, yesterday was the 10-year anniversary of when Android made its first debut on T-Mobile, actually. So T-Mobile had a phone called the G1, which was also known as the HTC Dream. So HTC was the manufacturer, and Android was the OS that was on it. And if you see pictures of this phone, I should tweet it out, but it looks like a really thick and chunky BlackBerry that's all screen, and then you can slide the screen out, and there was a QWERTY keyboard underneath the screen. And I remember seeing this phone come out, and I remember thinking, that's awesome. Now, at the time, I was a Palm Pilot user, and I had actually just migrated from Palm into Windows OS, and I was into these Windows phones, and then to see a screen slide and have a BlackBerry-type QWERTY keyboard, it was amazing. I remember thinking, this is the future. This is so cool. And also, Android started putting cameras on the front of their phones, not necessarily on the HTC Dream, but it was like, wow, we can get video cameras now? That's science fiction. That's crazy. And it's going to be in my cell phone? So Android changed things. Now, you could argue Apple actually started the change, and I would agree with you. Apple put the internet in your pocket. That's what made Apple cooler than BlackBerry and cooler than Windows OS. Because you actually had the internet in your pocket. It was much better than the browsers that the other phones gave you. But Android brought customization. It brought the Google apps were all integrated. So you have Gmail, Google Maps, then later came Chrome, Docs, and Photos. And so that's all totally integrated into Android. So,
and what I like about Android is how much more customizable it is. You can do a lot more with it. You can tweak it a lot more. It's easier to, get under the hood and do things you want to do. With my iPhone, I'm basically stuck with the way it is. And I think it's a great model, but, I went to Android for 3 years. You remember that when I switched over, and I really enjoyed being able to do whatever I wanted. Live backgrounds, I was able to change and tweak things for my apps that I was developing. It was just a whole lot easier.
Yeah. So it is. It's great. It's customizable. I really enjoy Android, but now the elephant in the room is the many different fractured types of phones out there, right? You cannot make Android as smooth and as seamless as what you get with the iOS experience and iPhone, because the software is made to work directly with the hardware. So it's still interesting to see. So more numbers. So nowadays there are 2 billion people are out there using an Android device today.
Oh, so 2 and 7. That's a lot.
Half of those have Shazam.
Half of them have Shazam. Yeah. Good memory.
So anyways, it's fascinating to see where we've come. So to go along with that, some other interesting things in the phone news this last week. We've been talking about the conspiracy theories about the Pixel 3, the leaks that have been happening with it. Have they been intentional? And then there was rumors about the Pixel 3 Ultra, another phone that would not have this terrible, ugly notch. And so we finally got some answers this week. And the answers came from 2 video bloggers. So the first is Brandon from This Tech Today, and the one that made it really famous is John Prosser from Front Page Tech. And basically, they were the ones talking about these rumors and really spreading it. And they said they finally got to talk to an engineer that works for Google and is actually on the team for designing the Pixel 3.
What did they say?
Well, first they had to lock down all these security protocols, using VPNs, and any messaging we do has to be on an app that will delete everything within a few seconds so that there was really no trace. But they said the leaks were not intentional. We thought they were. You and I talked about it as a way to drum up buzz. But it turns out that the leaks were not intentional. It came from Foxconn's factory in China where they install the LG screens, and that's where some of the prototypes, or a bunch of prototypes, were stolen. And so the leaks happened, but then Google didn't try to stop the leaks. They actually allowed leaks to continue to happen so that they could find who is the source of the leaks and try to plug the holes. So according to their inside source, they weren't on purpose, but then they didn't try to stop it.
But unfortunately, that means that it's going to have a beastly notch at the top, right? It's not going to be notchless.
Yes. So to get to the Pixel 3 Ultra, which is this bezel-less, notchless phone that we're all hoping was going to show up and save the Pixel brand, doesn't look like it's coming. So if you remember back in January, Google purchased HTC. It purchased their phone design team. And so now, essentially, they had two teams. They had the original Pixel team, and then they have this HTC team, and the original Pixel 3 team. So when they purchased it, the Pixel 3 team was already 4 months into development. And you can't just bring a whole new team with all their tools and all their equipment into the lab and say, use these guys. So basically what they did is they said, according to this inside source, HTC team with all the bells and whistles and cool equipment, you're now working on the Pixel 4, which is coming out next year. Current team, you continue with the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL, and if people aren't going to like it, it won't matter because you're done when this is over anyways.
Wow, interesting.
So apparently this engineer was on the Pixel 3 team, doesn't expect to stick around for the Pixel 4. Looks like he's already been replaced by this new team that was purchased with HTC. So I guess we'll look forward to see what happens.
That is really interesting. Now, we've got to go, but before we do, I just wanted to remind you guys, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, and we'd actually love to hear what you have to say. Please comment below. We'll get back to you, and if you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss for next week's podcast or video blog, please let us know, and we'd love to do that for you.
Leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. We'd love to hear from you.